Shockloaf. 1200 Films podcast, all horror, all the time, as it should be. We got quite a blend of films this week. We got some big budget films, some low budget films, some science fiction kind of films, and some kind of fantasy horror films. We got aliens, vampires, we got the whole shamil. Of course, going over the rating score one more time. At the bottom, we got dumpster fire garbage, and then we got can't quite recommend, and then okay if you're desperate, and then put on the watch list, then at the top, put on top of the watch list. And here is Kitty Cat. My co-host is my Kitty Cat Mama. As soon as I start the show, every single time, she has to get right in my face and say, "What are you doing? I want to get involved. And I'm going to scratch you if I can't get involved." So we'll try to keep her at bay. I should have brought my treats. But anyway, let's get going. First film, 2017, Cold Moon. Critic rating of 71%. Audience rating of 38%. Stars Josh Stewart and Christopher Lloyd. Yes, that Christopher Lloyd, Back to the Future. He's still kicking, still popping out movies. He's barely in it, though. He has a couple scenes and he looks a little rough. Josh Stewart, the star, he was in the great movie called The Hunted, which I watched during my attempted world record run, failed record run. But that movie was much better than this. This one, basically, what Josh Stewart is doing, he continues to kill people to cover up a conspiracy, and they start haunting him. And it's filled with a lot of spooky images, a lot of ghosts, and jump scares, and it's been done. It's been done 1,000 times. I've noticed critics like basic horror films. If there's more than one plot twist, it's like 20%. But if it's just real straightforward and basic, it gets higher than 50% on these Rotten Tomatoes scores. That's just, and this is a very basic horror film. I would put this as just barely an okay if you're desperate. If you need something on in the background, go ahead and play it. Next one, 2019, The Unwelcoming House. This was interesting. Very low budget, but very well made. Set in Mount Pleasant. I'm trying to find out if it was actually filmed in Mount Pleasant, or was that just kind of, the fake location. I've seen every single episode of Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures and Ghost Lab and Ghost Detectives and every single ghost hunting show ever, and it's really, really hard for films to recreate that in a plain setting. And this film probably comes about as close as I've seen to the intensity and excitement level of an actual ghost haunting hunt, And that was really amazing for the limitations of this film. It's like it knows what it's doing. It's like, wow, it was refreshing. Because I've seen so many of these ghost hunters. The synopsis of the ghost hunters go into this haunted mansion and they get more than what they bargained for. It's like, really, and it's always cheesy and silly, and there's always one big scare at the end. This film just kept unraveling and unraveling, and the mood was always, kind of ominous and malicious. And then it's basically this guy in a normal little house in Mount Pleasant. He's living there with his little kid, and there's things going on, and it kind of snowballs, and then he does some EVP work. For those that don't know what that means he gets a little tape recorder or whatever, and tries to communicate with this, and yeah, it's and you got to pay attention to this film too, because there's a lot going on in the background sometimes, so you have to watch like real close. So that was cool too. So yeah, I really enjoyed this film. I definitely put it on the watch list. Definitely. It's not a big budget film, so if you're only into big budget films, this might not be for you. But if you're into the gritty, independent kind of horror films, Then check this one out, Unwelcoming House, and it's also getting a sequel. So I will be looking forward to that, and I will likely be reviewing that. Then we go to 2011. Some Guy Who Kills People. Critic rating of 82%. Audience rating of 58%. Stars Kevin Corrigan, who I'm not a big fan of. You would know him if you saw him. If you don't know who that is offhand, then Barry Bostwick, who you gotta love. He was from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. The guy that sang "Damn It, Janet." Well, damn it, he should have picked a better movie, because this movie wasn't that great. It was okay. This guy he gets teased, and then he went away, and then he comes back and starts picking off the people that made his life miserable. And it's kind of a horror comedy. Nothing will ever touch that Dale versus Evil movie, Tucker and Dale versus Evil movie. That will never be touched as far as top horror comedy. But it's a film. This one I can't quite recommend, so we'll just move on. 2019, Captive State, an alien horror film. Critic rating of 44%, audience rating of 39%. This was a really dark, gritty sci-fi star, John Goodman. It's always nice to see him, and you want to see a good John Goodman horror film, watch Red State. Then it also had Machine Gun Kelly, and I heard he was kind of a whiny baby on the set, from what I've heard, from what I've read. But he actually did okay as far as acting. It sets up for a sequel, which we probably won't get since it had a $25 million budget and only made $8.8 million. So if it does get a sequel, it'll be on the Sci-Fi Channel, and it will probably have a budget of 0. So we'll see. But I would say it's okay for Desperate. It's fine. It's okay, especially if you're into science fiction horror. This is it's fine. Then we got 2006, The Hamiltons. There's no critic rating, unfortunately, for this film, and an audience score of only 38%. This was on one of those the list of 8 films to die for series that came out several years ago. This was one of the earlier ones, and one of the more popular ones. I guess it has quite a cult following. In a couple years later, in 2011, it was made into a play, and then in 2012, it had a sequel. I did not know about this sequel, so I will have to check out the sequel. This movie was just fine. It's basically this family, I guess young adults mostly, of vampires, and they're trying to cope with day-to-day life and not try to screw things up too bad. And when they do, they just kind of pick up and start over somewhere else and change their name and say, this is what we are now. They can't change who they are. They're, they just change their name. But they're interesting film. Yep, I would say that is put on the watch list. Then we got an interesting one. 2019, The Vanishing. Not to be confused with the 1993 The Vanishing with Kiefer Sutherland, which I saw in the theater. Someone must have drove me, because I would have been too young to drive at that time. I don't know who took me to see that movie. I mean, I remember seeing it in the theater. I thought, wow, what a good movie. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. This one is not a remake. It is about the Flannan Isle Lighthouse mystery. In 1900, these 3 lighthouse keepers disappeared, and no one knows what happened to them. I'll tell you, I'll go into the true story a little bit. When they went to go pick them up, there was no one there. And when they started poking around, the beds were unmade, the clock had stopped, one chair had been turned over, and there was no sign of any of them. There's 3 of them there. 2 of them were very experienced. One was young and not, but And in one of the journal, when they looked at the journal entries, one had been talking about this huge storm that was coming, and they were really scared that it might, do harm to them, and how they were praying. And then the storm went away, and then everything was good. And that was the last journal entry. And apparently, I don't know how they know this, but apparently there was no storm in that area at the time the journal says there was. So what the heck was going on? And this film just kind of speculates, kind of in a grandioso way, of what may have happened. But it's fun. It's interesting. Gerard Butler stars. It's good to see him. It had a critic rating of 88%, audience rating of 45%, which is too bad. But yeah, I thought this was thoroughly enjoyable. I would definitely put it on the watch list. Yep, go check it out. Then another 2000, we got a lot of 2019 movies. Into the Dark series from Hulu. It's called They Come Knocking, about black-eyed kids. Black-eyed kids are creepy. That's yeah. There is no Rotten Tomatoes profile of this film, which is too bad. So there's no rating. It's just what I've got to say about it. That's it, I guess. There's not even a Wikipedia page on it. But this dad and the daughter and another young one, is a boy or a girl? Anyway, there's a third younger one. And they're out in their little camper out in the middle of nowhere, and they start getting knocks on the door, on their little camper door in the middle of the night. And they look out and they see these little kids with black eyes staring back at them. Like, what the heck? And then the black-eyed kids start playing mind games, and there's Kitty. Kitty, no, almost done. Then the kids start playing mind games, and it kind of evolves from there. It spirals completely out of control, but it's a lot of fun. I would definitely put it on the watch list too. And that leads us to our retro and feature film review of Dead End Drive-In.
Here now the news for July 4th, 1995. In the wake of widespread economic collapse, officials are reporting massive general strikes.
In the 1970s, there was Clockwork Orange. Then in the 1980s came Mad Max and The Road Warrior. Now comes a startling new vision that takes you into the apocalypse and beyond. Back to the old drive-in you used to know and love. Only now, when the show is over, there is no way out. Dead End Drive-In.
Rodney, not getting through to you, am I, son? No cabs, no buses, no transport.
Welcome to your future, like it or not. Dead End Drive-In.
Dead End Drive-In. Dead End Drive-In, made in 1986, an Australian film. No critic rating, but an audience score of 42%, which is a joke. This is one of Quentin Tarantino's favorite films, which is interesting. Set in the scary, distant future of 1995. Basically, crime has kind of overtaken everything. It's kind of everything's on a kind of a government shutdown, and there's no wandering on the streets at all at any times, unless you're in a vehicle. So these kids go to this drive-in, right, in their car, and then someone takes their tires so they can't leave, and they can't just walk out, so they're kind of stuck. So it turns out that was kind of planned. And this drive-in theater is kind of a post-apocalyptic, almost a, dare say, a concentration camp type situation. And they're given food and meals, but everything about it is not cool. And the guy that runs it, the owner, he's the nicest little middle-aged man you could ever meet. Looks like he should be in a sitcom or something with Elf or something. He's like, oh yeah, just you got it, guys. Got it pretty good. Just go in and stay and eat what you want, yada yada yada. And, but in the background there's fires and people being tortured and et cetera, et cetera. So this guy and his girlfriend are there, and they get stuck there, and he wants out, and she ends up liking the place and wants to stay with all the gangs and hoodlums and everything else going on, and he's like, no, we gotta go. The Rotten Tomatoes, because I wondered what genre Rotten Tomatoes had this as. This is the genre they have listed at for this movie: action adventure, art house international, drama, horror, mystery and suspense, science fiction, and fantasy. Seriously, that's the genre this film falls under, which is amazingly accurate. But if you love 80s films, as you know I do, gosh darn it, and that full-on retro show will be coming in the not-too-distant future. So you can look forward to that. But yeah, this film was excellent. I'd highly, highly recommend, especially if you love 80s films. So I'd put it on top of the watch list. And for next week, we got Head Count, Arbor Demon, which stars Jake Busey, who just popped up in Stranger Things Season 3, which I'll probably be reviewing at some point the third season. Then we got Toy Box, which looks eerily similar to They Come Knocking. And then we got the 2019 version of Escape Room. And then we got a movie called The Strange Ones with Alex Pettyfer from I Am Number 4. Then we got the Levenger tapes, and then a Hulu movie called I'm Just Effing With You. I swear to you, that's the name. And then our retro film is a movie called Cameron's Closet, which sounds like it should be a late 90s gay coming-of-age film, but it is not. It is an 80s horror film of this kid. From the trailer, it looks like a kid that has a demon in his closet. So we'll see what that's about. So until next time, I will see you later, Gator.